Firmware 1.6.0 tested. No more overheating and video wobbles.
Yesterday, I updated the firmware to 1.6.0 on my EOS R5, and I spent some time testing it out and experimenting with different video settings to see if I could get the camera to overheat. And you know what? I have to admit, I am super impressed with what is going on. So let's talk about it. All right, so in this video one, I'm gonna talk about a glitch I ran into when updating the firmware on the EOS R5. So I'm gonna mention that quickly. I'm gonna talk about my results when recording in those video modes that traditionally overheated and talk about what's going on there. We're also gonna check in on those corner wobbles. And then, I don't know if I'm gonna put this in the video or not, but I feel like I wanna rant about Canon. I'm kind of fucking pissed off at Canon and I wanna talk about it. And you guys let me know what you think. Am I over the line with my thoughts? Are you feeling the same thing? Are we all in the same boat? Because I'm just really annoyed at Canon right now. All right, so the first thing I want to touch on is this glitch I ran into when trying to upgrade an EOS R5. It had firmware 1.3.0 on it, and when I put 1.6.0 on a memory card, try to put it in the camera wouldn't recognize the new firmware. Made a video about it there if you want to see it in more detail, but to make a long story short, what I had to do to get around that situation is install firmware 1.5.1 on the camera first, and then the camera would be able to recognize 1.6.0, and that's how I got around that. So if that's an issue you're running into, trying to install the new firmware on a camera that has old firmware, try that method. It should work for you. So with that being said, let's move on to the overheating situation, because that's pretty exciting. Okay, so let's talk about overheating. This new firmware 1.6.0 gave us some nice little updates to the R5. A video about it there if you want to go check it out. That's where I talk about all the things that we got in the firmware. This video is all about testing that firmware. So we're going to test the overheating. I'm not going to show you the back of my camera screen and myself recording and all that stuff. We're just going to jump right into the results. All right, so the first test I did was 8K RAW. I wanted to see how long I could record in 8K RAW before the camera overheated. Now, here's the bottleneck with my testing. I have a 128 gigabyte CF Express card, and that's pretty small if you're trying to record 8K RAW. But yeah, I never invested in a bigger CF Express card. I didn't see the point because I can't really use any of these higher end features on the camera, so I just went with the smallest one I could get, and that was it. So that's what I'm using. So with 8K RAW, I got about 6 minutes and 28 seconds of recording time, and I had to do that a few times. I got to a total of 32 minutes recording time in 8K RAW, which I think is pretty good. And then I got an error warning with the card saying that the camera couldn't write to the card fast enough. The card was too slow. So I don't know what that's all about, because the card was recording fine when I started. And I think I recorded 6 times. And on the 5th time of 6 minutes and 28 seconds, it gave me that warning. And then again on the 6th time, so I stopped recording. And I don't know if the CF Express cards slow down when they get hotter, or it's some kind of thing with CF Express cards. They don't take in information fast enough, or don't read information fast enough when they get hot. I don't know what the science behind that is, but that was my situation. That's what I ran into. So if you want to shoot 8K RAW, definitely get a bigger CF Express card. The other thing I want to say is that CF Express card gets pretty hot. It's not so hot that you can't touch it. Like, I could hold it in my hand, it was fine, but you could noticeably feel that it was hot. So I would maybe recommend just leave it in the camera for a minute, or open the memory card door and just let it sit for a few minutes before you pull it out. If you're sensitive to heat. I mean, I cook a lot, so these fingers, they don't feel heat like they used to. All right, so that's my experience with 8K RAW. Okay, so next up I tried 8K RAW Lite, and I got a little bit better results. Right over there, I got 10 minutes per card, which is a little bit better than 6 minutes and 28 seconds. And I got to a total of 66 minutes of recording time. And again, I ran into the same situation where the card was too slow for the camera, and it just stopped recording at that point. So it wasn't overheating that got me. It wasn't the card that was full. It was slow write speeds to the card again. So I guess that's just something to keep in mind if you want to record 8K. And I was able to do it for about half an hour before I got those slow write speed warnings. So I mean, that's more than enough. If I use 8K, it's only going to be for like situations like this, if I'm holding a product and want to completely zoom into it and zoom back out. So that's what I would use 8K for. I wouldn't really film a whole video in 8K, so it's definitely good enough for me. But if you want to make a whole video in 8K, again, invest in better cards or get a Ninja V Plus. I think that can record 8K through HDMI. I've got a Ninja V and it does pretty good. It's got Apple ProRes and all that stuff. So it's handy for me and it allows me to get around that 30-minute record limit, because that's the other issue. I mean, even if I had a memory card in there that could record for an hour straight, I would still have to record in chunks of 30 minutes and 30 minutes and 30 minutes and 30 minutes. And Canon, I mean, like if we can record 8K RAW for, you know, what did I have, 32 minutes the first time and 66 minutes here, then I think it's time to get rid of that 30-minute record limit. No longer necessary. Those taxes don't apply anymore. It's, you know, so yeah, I'd like to see that gone. So now let's move on to the next thing. Next up, we have my favorite recording mode, and that is 4K HQ, and that is what you're watching right now. Maybe you don't want to see this face in 4K HQ, but basically what that is oversampled 8K. So you have 8K and it's shrunk down to 4K in camera, and that's what 4K HQ is, and it gives you a tremendous amount of detail and sharpness and clarity, and it looks amazing. And right now I have a Pro Mist filter 1/8 on the camera as well to cut down some of the sharpness, because I find that the sharpness is too high. But with a Pro Mist filter, it kind of softens the edges a little bit, but still gives you sharpness. So let's see if we can take that off. So this is 4K HQ without the Pro Mist filter, and you can see it's a lot sharper. It just looks crispy, almost too crispy. So that's 4K HQ. And in terms of recording time, I was able to hit 2 hours, and that was with 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes. I didn't run into any issues with slow write speeds or anything like that with the card. The camera didn't give any single overheat warning. It just went 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes. And when I got to 2 hours, I was like, that's it. I'm not gonna sit here and watch the camera any longer. I can't imagine wanting to record a video for longer than 2 hours anyway. So that's 4K HQ, and I'll put this back on the camera so you guys don't have to see all this. All right, next up, 4K 60, which is a very popular feature for a lot of people. And with this card that I have, I was only able to record 20 minutes before the card filled up, but I did get to 2 hours of recording total. And I think that's fantastic for 4K 60. If you want to, you know, slow that down, make it normal, or slow it down, make it slow-mo, or keep it normal and stuff like that. 4K 60 is very versatile. So being able to shoot 2 hours almost straight, pretty much. All I did was format the card and record again, format the card, record again. But yeah, being able to shoot 4K 60 for 2 hours, that is amazing. You could probably go even more than that. I didn't get any overheat warnings, not even the white. There's a white flash that comes up first, then it goes to red. But yeah, I didn't get any overheat warnings whatsoever in 4K 60. So that is pretty awesome for those of you who like to shoot 4K 60. Okay, now for the ultra fun 4K 120, and I love shooting in 4K 120, but it's also my biggest pet peeve with the R5, because with the old firmware, you'd get about 5 minutes of recording time. Like I'm taking photos of a client or something, and then I want to do some slow-mo. I try and shoot some slow-mo, and 5 minutes later, done. And of course, if you're shooting slow-mo, 5 minutes doesn't last that long, especially if you're trying to like pick and choose shots and do different things, and it irritated the heck out of me. But with this new firmware, I was able to get 29 minutes and 52 seconds of 4K 120 before the camera overheated. I thought at first I hit the 30-minute record limit on the camera, but it wasn't that. It was just, that was the timing. I guess if your room is cooler or you have a fan or something like that, you might be able to record longer. But for me, 29 minutes, 52 seconds of 4K 120 is absolutely awesome. And of course, no one's gonna record 4K 120 in a 30-minute segment anyway. I mean, it's little clips, little clips, little clips, little clips, and you put it together. So if you shoot like that, you could probably get an hour or so, maybe more of 4K 120, who knows? But yeah, so I'm really impressed with that. Now I can actually use this R5 and deliver content to my clients instead of being like, hold on, I have to wait for my camera to cool down before I can shoot more. Like, that was just so irritating, and that was the one thing that really pissed me off about the R5. But now, with this firmware, it's kind of like we have that camera that Canon promised us 2 years ago, and I think it's safe to say that the R5 can go into that like top 5 list of perfect hybrid cameras. So yeah, I mean, I even preferred over the R5 C. I almost bought it, but I decided not to. The thing with me is like, I like shooting events and I like to jump between video and photo. And with the R5 C, the big hiccup for me is like when you flip it into video mode, it loads that other operating system, and then it takes 10 seconds. And if you're shooting a wedding and it's like there's a cool moment happening and you want to go into video mode, with the R5, you just hit the MFN button. Got a video about it there if you want to know how to switch modes fast. And there you go. You're ready to record. But with the R5 C, you got to flip the switch. Wait. And I mean, I'm sure there's probably some sort of like record mode and photo mode, but I don't know how much latitude you have in terms of adjusting it and stuff. But yeah, the R5 to me, perfect hybrid camera. This firmware, absolutely awesome. And yeah, now let's get outside and test this camera in vlogging mode. All right, so with firmware 1.6.0, Canon did some tweaks to the digital movie IS, which got rid of, or is supposed to get rid of, the corner wobbles. We're testing it now. I'll let you know what I think when I get back to the studio and take a look at this footage, but it's supposed to clear up those wobbles. This is what it looked like before. And this is what it looks like now with the digital movie IS level 1. And we're gonna test this lens, which is the 15-35 RF. And then I also have a 16-35 EF version, and that doesn't have IS. So right now we have IS on, we have IBIS on, and we have digital movie IS. So this is what this looks like. And now I'm gonna turn off the digital movie IS, and we're gonna see what that looks like. Okay, so this is what it looks like with the digital movie IS on. We just have lens IS and IBIS. Are the wobbles different in the corners? Does it look better? Does it look the same? Does it look worse? That's the question. Okay, so now we're shooting with the 16-35 EF version. No IS on this lens, but I have digital movie IS turned on. How do the corner wobbles look? How does everything look? I'm not really trying to hold the camera steady. I'm just walking and talking, and that's that. Now I'm gonna turn off the digital movie IS and we'll just have camera IBIS. Okay, so now we're recording with just camera IBIS, 16-35, no lens IS, no digital movie IS, and this is what it looks like. Testing. How's the stabilization? Does it look good? I'm gonna get back to the studio and check out this footage. I'm curious. Hopefully those corner wobbles are gone with the RF version at least. Hoping for the best with the EF version. All right, so let's talk about those vlogging tests. Like, wow, Canon, you did a good job. That was awesome. Like, really, compared to like the previous firmware to this firmware with the corner wobbles, with the wide angle lens, like it's night and day, right? Like before, those little jello-y corners would distract the heck out of you and you couldn't really watch the video. It would just be like, But now, I mean, they wobble a little bit. It's not absolutely perfect, but if you run an image stable or warp stabilizer on your footage, it would probably look even more stable, which I didn't do in this video, but right out of camera, it's pretty good. Digital movie IS recognizes you have a wide angle lens on, and it just probably changes the way it does what it does and stabilizes things differently. The only downside to using digital movie IS is it crops in, right? That's how it works. It stabilizes, but it crops in. So the 15-35 is not a 15-35 anymore. Just something to keep in mind. Now, if you're looking for a budget RF lens, Canon does have, what was it, a 14-35, and there's also that 16mm f2.8, which you can use as well. So those are the options. And then with the EF version, and that lens was non-IS, so with IBIS on and digital movie IS, it was usable. It wasn't as good as the RF version, but it was definitely usable. So if you have an old EF lens that's wide angle and you want to vlog with it, you should definitely test it out. And of course, whereas this lens, in my opinion, I think this is the best lens for vlogging. See, don't focus on my eyes. There we go. This is a 10-18 EFS lens, and with the EF to RF adapter, you can use this on the EOS R, and it's plastic. It's a featherweight, and if you have to vlog and hold up the camera to your face for long periods of time, it weighs nothing. So I definitely recommend that. I have a video about it right there or there. Everything's a mess right now. But yeah, so anyway, vlogging test is a success. I'm really happy with the update there on the corner wobbles. Now, unfortunately, I have to rant about why I'm kind of pissed off at Canon. So, yeah. All right, so as I'm editing this video, I'm watching it and my rant is just over the top. It's too much. I decided to just delete it and refilm it. You know, sometimes you get emotional and you just start going and going, and those kinds of rants are fun, but those are best kept for your circle of friends and not to be put on the internet and made public for everybody. So I'm just gonna refilm it and just stick to the key points I was trying to make without all that emotional junk there in the way. But yeah, the point I wanna make is that I pre-ordered the EOS R5. When I watched Canon's advertising for the R5, they advertise, 8K, 4K HQ, 4K 120. They just gave us all these video specs. And I'm a hybrid shooter. I shoot photos mostly and videos as well, and then the YouTube channel. So for me, it seemed like the perfect camera. I pre-ordered it, picked it up. First day it was available, I got it. And then obviously we figured out about this overheating nonsense and all these nice video features that you paid for, you couldn't really use. See where I'm getting at? It's just like you couldn't shoot in 4K HQ for more than like what, 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then camera shuts down. Now with this firmware update, we can shoot 8K RAW, 2 hours plus, 4K HQ, 2 hours plus, 4K 120, no problem. We have all these features that are amazing. I paid for these features 2 years ago. Like, I bought this camera 2 years ago, and I've been struggling with these overheating issues and been limited in terms of what I can do with this camera for 2 years, and now here's a firmware that fixes everything. Where was this firmware 2 years ago? I didn't even have to send in my camera to get upgraded. I didn't have to send it back to Canon to get heat sinks put in or thermal paste or do some kind of like modification. It was just a firmware. Like, there was nothing wrong with the camera 2 years ago. Why didn't this firmware come out 2 years ago? So just like that kind of pissed me off. And if you think about the whole process, it's like, what, last year Canon said, oh, we have a fix to the R5, it's an R5 C, it's a cinema version of the R5, and it's gonna have unlimited recording, you can do all those things you always wanted to do with your R5, and I almost bought that camera, and I'm glad I didn't, because, anyway, that's a separate rant. That camera is more of a prototype than a polished product, but it's like, Canon, you could have come out with this firmware to fix the R5 instead of making an R5 C, You could have fixed the R5 and made an R5 C, but you waited for everyone to buy an R5 C, and then you're like, oh, okay, hold on, we have a fix for the R5 now. I don't know, it just feels like there's something so disingenuous about that. It just feels like Canon they're like used car salesmen, and they're just trying to swindle you and make as much profit off of their customers rather than giving their customers the best possible products they can, because this firmware should have come out 2 years ago. Anyway, that's the point I wanted to make. I just feel really ripped off by Canon, and I feel like I've lost 2 years of creation with the R5, because with these features I could have created better videos and experimented, done different things, and offered more. I guess I could offer better quality product to my clients too, which I couldn't do because of the limitations of the R5. Now that's all fixed, so I'm grateful for that, but at the same time, it's like, Canon, your business practices are awful. Awful. Okay, end of mini calm down rant. But those are the points I wanted to make, and yeah, let me know, do you agree, disagree? Are you a Canon R5 user? How do you feel about this? Have you bought an R5 C recently? How do you feel about these firmware updates to the R5? Were you an R5 user before, and did you sell it to buy the R5 C? I think right now, as of the release of this new firmware, the R5 is pretty much like the perfect hybrid camera. You get 45 megapixels on the photo side with great photo specs, great tracking, great autofocus tracking. And on the video side, again, great autofocus tracking, 4K HQ, 8K, 8K RAW, C-Log, was it 3? And I think right now the R5 is probably the best camera on the market at this price point. So we'll see what happens going forward. Fuji, what are you waiting for? Fix your autofocus, get a full frame camera. Let's go. I would be happy to switch to Fuji. And speaking of switching systems, how many people switched away from Canon? Like, Canon, how many customers did you lose? I know several people that bought an R5 and were disappointed with the video specs and then said, you know what, forget it, I'm buying an FX3. So you guys lost a lot of customers with these bad decisions. Anyway, this video's over. Peace out. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. And if you like this kind of content, definitely subscribe to the channel. All right, see ya.